Hello. So here is a picture, and we have another picture. This is going to go over a little bit of Hermetic alchemical theory, and it's good for maybe just understanding life, like the basics of life. It's a little bit like physics, but easier and seemingly more practical to some extent. Right. So here we have a diagram of the 5 elements and their names. First is space, second is fire, and these are triangles, you see. Upward triangle, downward triangle here, and triangles with lines and circle. The third one here is air. It's kind of in between these, as you can see. That's quite interesting. And then the fourth one is water, and fifth is earth. Now this is more negative, as in from here, these two, for example, are more negative, while these two are more positive, though I guess space is kind of its own thing. To be completely honest, I should actually probably put space in between them. I think that might help a little bit more, so I'll fix that up for you. Okay, so here are the positive elements, as you can see. Positive being usually they're hotter, they're warmer. Admittedly, water is a good conductor of heat. It has strange properties when it comes to heat. I believe if you leave a basin of water in a room, it'll heat it up. It's interesting, anyway. But these two are the colder elements. Usually, at least, if you touch water, it's cold. If you touch earth, it's cold. If you touch the air, which is a strange thing to say, but if you put your hand out in the air, it's not exactly cold unless it's a cold day, but it's more warmer usually than certain objects or certain fluids. Though funny enough, I have this blanket which is strangely always warm, or it feels kind of like room temperature, even when it's cold. It's room temperature. Very good. I like it quite a lot. And fire, of course. Don't touch fire, but you know it's very hot. So that's how you can see these are more positive. These are also spiritual elements. Spiritual meaning more or less not physical is one easy way to think about it. Volatile, vaporous, that's all those ideas. Space is also, you could say it's a spiritual element. Technically, you can also say it's a lack of element. So it's not exactly spiritual in the way that it doesn't really exist, so to speak. As in, it exists, but it's an existence with nothing. Yeah. So space, of course, is three-dimensional space. It's everywhere. It's what reality exists in and on. I think of it like a canvas of a painting. If you didn't have a canvas, you couldn't paint. And of course, a wall can be a canvas, a plate can be a canvas, anything can be. Space is a canvas of life. And, if you want to do experiment with pure space, people do it in vacuums. It has interesting properties. Certain foods are made through vacuuming, vacuum boiling, because in a vacuum, the higher you go up, the higher, if you go up a higher mountain, or maybe you built some kind of escalator or super high story building, apparently things boil quicker. So they vacuum boil things, or they vacuum freeze and take all the liquids out and all that. It's an interesting element, but vacuuming is a use of space. Similarly, if you were to go up into outer space, you could experiment more with it. Anyway, the two negative elements, water and earth. Water is anything liquid. Oils, for example, even though an oil is a kind of thick, strange liquid, or like a dishwashing liquid, these are thicker liquids, but they're still liquids. So you can kind of think, you can ask the question of what's the line between a physical and a liquid and solid? Well, that's an interesting question. I guess things like slime or really soft dough, these are kind of, in between things. So yeah, you can draw a third category, but water is water. It's any form of liquid. Pretty simple stuff. And if you apply a heat to water, of course, it starts to turn into an air usually. Sometimes some liquids, if you apply a flame to them, they catch on fire, like gasoline or high percentage alcohol. So yeah, it's interesting. If you freeze them or put certain chemicals into them, they turn into solids. So yes, solids or earth is anything solid. Again, this is solid, liquid, gas, plasma, or earth, water, air, fire, space, which is more simple, I think. Earth, of course, it's like you can think reality is made up of Lego blocks. Earth has its own kind of physics and way. Usually, geometry, you learn geometry if you want to learn about Earth, or you just play with Lego blocks and, understand how squares, because Earth's shape is a square, it's geometrical solid, so to speak, which more or less just means it kind of relates to what Earth is like. Similarly, water's shape is a sphere. You can think space, I think, is some weird pentagonal thing. Air, they use a diamond. Not a diamond, whatever that thing is. It's kind of like a double four-sided pyramid, and fire is a triangle. But this doesn't really matter. If you like shapes and you like geometry, look that up. More or less what it means is this is kind of what relates to these things. A square relates to Earth because, Earth's kind of square shape, it's kind of stable. You can build things like houses out of bricks, which aren't square shaped, but they're similar. Fire, of course, it's upward, the upward triangle. Fire goes up. That's how you can think about it. Anyway, all of reality is made out of these 5 elements. If you know of another, then feel free to comment down below and we can discuss it. But things, if you thought radiation or some kind of non-physical force, they all come under space, I would say. Anything plasma-ish, just say like electricity in its pure form of, or electromagnetism would be related to space. But if you manifest it downwards, if you degrade it, so to speak, and it turns into lightning, it'd more be a plasma. So yeah, fire is burning oils usually, or burning volatile gases, or lightning, like electricity in its electrical form. That's kind of a plasma, I believe. So that's how fire is, and fire is the purifying force. It's how you get rid of a lot of things. People used to burn everything in fire, which is quite interesting. So you can think fire purifies, it changes, it gets rid of, it spiritualizes, you can say. It makes things into a spiritual form. And if you burn things, you get an ash, which is the remnant minerals, the remnant carbonate minerals usually, of something. Air is any gases, many things, if you burn them, will turn into a gas. They'll catch on fire and turn into a gas. You get smokes, various fuel gases like underground fermented gases from fermented earth, essentially fermented other things, fermented whatever. So also if you burn various minerals, you can get, for example, like how they make sulfuric acid out of sulfurous minerals. You burn it and it becomes sulfurous air, and then you reform it and it becomes a liquid, which brings us to this. As you see, salt, mercury, and sulfur, the three alchemical reagents. You see, salt is made from water and earth and water. How is salt made from earth and water? Well, if you burn something into an ash, that is the earth, and then you leach with water. So you burn wood into an ash, and you mix it with water, and then you strain off the water, and you heat it, and eventually it will crystallize. And you heat it down enough, evaporate it, you get salt. So water and earth can make a salt. Water and air makes mercury, alchemical mercury. This isn't talking about real mercury, which is a volatile liquid. Plant mercury is alcohol. Animal mercury is ammonia. And mineral mercury is mainly sulfuric acid, but also other various acids. How's it made out of water and air? Because remember how I said if you burn various minerals, it'll turn into like a gas. Well, sometimes you have to put that gas into some water, and then it'll infuse the water, like with making nitric acid. Also with alcohol, it's partly a liquid, it's also partly a volatile. It's because it has a volatile component. As you see here, these are volatile and fixed. A liquid is inherently fixed, but mercury, or what we call volatile liquid, is a fixed volatile. So if you have alcohol, it is a fixed liquid because liquid in earth is fixed. But if you open the top, and this is a high percentage alcohol, you'll smell it, it'll hit you. You can test that by buying methylated spirits and just opening the top and potentially seeing how long it takes to evaporate. Similarly, gasoline is another mineral volatile liquid. If you open the gas tank of a car, the petrol, well, yeah, you can call it gas as well. Gas tank of a car, and I don't mean actual like LPG gas, as in actual volatile air, but I mean the petrol tank. If you open that overnight, it will evaporate out. So it's a fixed volatile made from water and air. It literally has a fixed air in it, and it has a liquid. So you can actually look at that chemically as well. Final one is sulfur, also called a resinous oil or a resin oil. This one's a little weird because you might think, how does air and fire make something? What exactly is that? Air and fire, what? So this one alchemically is actually oil, a resinous oil, and I believe it's air and fire, partly because you need air and fire to make it. If you burn an earth, like a herb, or specific crystal things, you have to know what, as in usually acetates, or it's an animal part, dried animal parts, like dried organs. You burn it in a boiling flask or in a special dry distiller. You have this. You have your material here. We have fire. It smokes. It smokes and goes up here, and then eventually redistills into a liquid, which is how sulfur works. Also, because if you burn it on fire, if you refine this down and you set it on fire, it will purely evaporate. It'll turn into a fire and an air, and you'll be left with, if it's pure, very pure, with pretty much nothing. So yeah, that's an interesting little idea. What are some examples? Resins, special resins, wood resins, for example. Not the wood vinegar, an actual like resinous kind of stuff. Yeah, I'll talk about that one later on. And you can use the mercury to get the sulfur, so to speak. Excuse me. So if you use alcohol, for example, on plants, you get this volatile resinous oil. You can also think essential oil. Essential oil is very, very volatile as well. Essential oil is a very high or a very pure form, so you can think essential oil is up here, the middle resin is there, and the very low resin, like a crude oil or a something like that, or a very crude black tarry nasty shit. This one's more if you burnt it and purified it, and you smoked something and then you re-distilled the smoke. This one's an essential oil up here, so you can think like the purity. Yes, so mercury will get the sulfur out, and as we've said, calcining, which is burning something in open air, will get you a ash, which you mix with water and recrystallize it to get it crystalline. Interesting picture. Prime material, celestial salt, celestial niter, xylitol, blah blah blah, and 5 elements and all that. So yep, hope you learned something, and hope it helps out your own research. And goodbye.